Something I've noticed in my work with fellow neurodivergents as a therapist is that they'll come to me with a prior diagnosis of autism or ADHD, or we'll notice some traits that are aligned with those diagnoses. And from there on out, they'll start telling me about their family, they'll start telling me about their partner. And a pattern I notice is that, autism and ADHD are congenital, they are passed down. And so one or both parents might be neurodivergent, and that becomes a discussion point in our work. And often their partner may themselves be neurodivergent, also undiagnosed, and like attracts like. And why this is, I believe, primarily, the main reason, is that we think, communicate, and behave often similarly across these two neurotypes. The one point of commonality that is often raised is we are direct communicators. And that's a preferred style of communication for many autistics and ADHDers. We don't have to navigate this double meaning, subtext kind of interaction that is normative with neurotypicals. We say what we mean. And there is no second meaning, there is no hidden intention. And that kind of direct communication is a huge relief because we don't have to jump through these mental hoops of trying to figure out what the person actually meant, or if they have a second meaning, if they're being sarcastic, if they're being hostile and they're dressing it up in polite words. And that is a huge relief. If you have a partner, it would make sense that you would want to be in a partnership with somebody who is capable and receptive to direct communication. That makes life infinitely more easier if you can both get to the point, not beat around the bush, and know where the other person stands. It helps decrease a lot of the social anxiety we experience, and it can also make for a much more comfortable, frank relationship where things are hashed out directly rather than left with people to read things between the lines. Now, granted, being both autistic and or ADHD is not a walk in the park. A lot of the challenges that happen in interpersonal relationships between neurotypicals will also show up in relationships between neurodivergents. A lot of the ways that we communicate aren't necessarily well received by fellow neurodivergents because at the end of the day, we might think alike, we might feel alike, we might act alike, but we still all have needs in relationships. And one of those needs is having a partner who can treat us with empathy, compassion, and understanding. And the way we communicate might be direct, but often there's not a lot of, context around it. We don't explain necessarily our point of view, why we said that, why we did that. We assume that the other person's going to infer what we feel, what we think, what our intention is. And that fallacy, that can lead people to a lot of conflict in relationships. It can lead to a lot of frustration. There can be a lot of assumptions made, and then frustration when those assumptions don't come true. And a problem that does reoccur because of this in relationships is somebody failing to connect and empathize and validate the other person's point of view. And this happens across all neurotypes, but it can happen with neurodivergence because there's an assumption that the direct communication should be the bridge and that people's intentions are already clear and explicit and made clear through repeated behavior. But that failure to practice empathy, to empathize with through some kind of communication, accommodation, expression of validation, that leads to feelings of this person isn't safe and they can't be there for me. And it can lead to relationship breakdowns. That said, this challenge and similar challenges aside, the fact that both, autism and ADHD neurotypes love this style of communication, the direct style of communication, have a lot in common, like, for example, being multi-passionate, having hyperfocus. This can be a great point for the relationship to flourish because similar worldviews will arise, similar interests, similar habits, and the capacity to empathize about those traits in your partner is raised. So there are pluses and there are also minuses to neurodivergent relationships. Are you in a neurodivergent relationship or have you been in one before? What are some of the challenges that have come up for you? What have been some of the strengths, some of the successes, the points of victory that you like to celebrate about that relationship? I would love to hear all about your experiences.